edition of What's Cooking with AARP. My name is Amanda and I'm one of your Kansas City area Hy-Vee dietitians, really excited to be kicking off 2021 making a recipe with you today. The appetizer we'll be making is a soup recipe. A reminder that before you start with anything in the kitchen, it's important to thoroughly wash your hands and make sure that your cooking surfaces are thoroughly cleaned as well. To start, this is a slow cooker recipe. You want to make sure that you have a slow cooker ready to prepare this. I'm going to be using a food processor. However, you could just as easily use a blender. Either option is going to mix it up and work just fine. For our ingredients, as I mentioned, we have kale. The kale, it should be washed and already chopped, and this is 3 cups. We have 1 yellow onion diced. Again, remember that you want to make sure that you're washing any of the produce that you're using before cutting it up. I've got it already diced up here. We have our vegetable stock. Now, I did select a vegetable stock that is unsalted. You could use whatever variety works best for you. This recipe in general is already going to be lower sodium than most of your canned soups that you would find. However, I think that the unsalted stock tastes just as good, and so I opted for that choice. The vegetable stock is much darker in color than a lot of our other stocks. For example, chicken stock is going to be a lighter color. Specifically, your vegetable stock usually looks a little darker, so if you notice that and you haven't worked with it before, know that that is normal and to be expected. The other ingredient we're using here is quinoa. Now, I have selected a type of quinoa that is pre-rinsed and pre-washed. Make sure that you check your packaging. If it is not pre-rinsed and not pre-washed, you would want to do that step yourself. But if you got an option such as the one that I selected that is pre-washed and already ready to go, then you would be able to put it in right away. Then we have 2 cans of beans. So beans, as you can see, are already rinsed and drained, ready to go. Know that you're going to need half of the beans for the first part of the recipe and half of the beans for the second part. We also have our fire roasted tomatoes. You can see that these are diced, and we're keeping the liquid in there. It's going to add to the liquid component of the soup. We have 1 cup of frozen corn. You could also use canned corn in absence of frozen if that's easier for you. We are going to use 3 cloves of garlic. 3 cloves of garlic equates to 1 tablespoon of minced garlic. So you can see here I have 1 tablespoon of minced garlic ready. We are using 1 tablespoon of our Italian seasoning, which is going to add some great flavor to our soup today. And then we have a poblano pepper, which I'm going to demonstrate cutting and preparing for the recipe. You will also likely need some type of spoon or utensil for this. Also, I have 1/4 cup. We're going to need 3/4 of a cup of the kale to put into the soup, so I'm going to measure this 3 times. You could also use a 3/4 cup measure. I also have a cutting board here and a knife for cutting the poblano pepper. And I grabbed a pair of gloves that I'm going to use while cutting the pepper because sometimes the spiciness of the pepper can get on your fingers and then can spread to other places. So as a precaution, I'm going to wear gloves. I have a little bit more sensitive of skin. You certainly don't need to, but know that that would be an option if you have gloves available. We're going to start with all of our ingredients with the exception of we're going to leave out 1 can of cannelli beans and we're going to wait on the kale. Now, because this is a slow cooker recipe, remember you can either do this cooked on high for 3 to 4 hours or cooked on low for 5 to 6 hours. Each slow cooker is going to be a little bit different, so I would recommend, checking it, keeping an eye on it in the cooking process to see how things are going. So for a moment, we're just going to set aside the kale and set aside 1 can of cannelli beans. And then into the slow cooker, we are going to add our 2 cups measured of our vegetable stock. I would recommend adding this liquid component first. And I have turned my slow cooker on low for now. We have our 1 diced onion. I'm going to add that in here. I don't know about you, but I love the flavor of onions adding to a soup, especially this time of year. It's going to add some great flavor, some great smell. Some people are surprised to hear that obviously, you know, onions, especially the type that we're using, are not super colorful. However, they still do give us some nutritional benefit. You're going to receive some antioxidants from your onion. White colored veggies and fruits can offer some immunity boost. That's one of the indicators of the antioxidants in the white fruits and veggies. So even though they don't have a bold color, when we think about eating a variety of different colors of fruits and vegetables, remember white is one of those as far as your fruits and veggies go. So we have our onions, we have our vegetable stock. I'm gonna go ahead and add in our fire roasted diced tomatoes. And again, I kept the liquid on there. That's gonna add some red to our soup. It's also going to add some of the nutrient lycopene. Lycopene is going to, in general, promote wellness. You'll notice that we are getting a variety of different colors across the board in this soup. Next, I'm going to add the corn. Corn sometimes gets a bad reputation. It actually is a great source of nutrition as well. It is a higher, a little bit more starchy in terms of vegetables. For a lot of people, we might count it as a, in more of the grain or carbohydrate place as opposed to in the veggie place, but we are still going to get some good nutritional value from it. It's adding some of that yellow color to our soup. It has some fiber, and it's going to add some really nice texture as well. So mixing that up just a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and add our minced garlic. If you have your garlic cloves, after you've washed them, go ahead and mince them as you'd like. And just mixing that in here. Now for our quinoa. So I'm opening quinoa. Quinoa is something that we get a lot of questions related to. Technically, it is a seed. So if I was, say, a plant scientist, I would categorize it as a seed. But I am a dietitian. So from a dietitian perspective, we would be counting it as a grain. It is going to be a complex grain. It is naturally gluten-free. So it's something that would be a great source of complex carbs for people who maybe can't have traditional grains, or even if you can have traditional grains, it can be a great variety and option to add in. Because, like I said, it's a source of complex carbohydrates that are going to digest a little bit more slowly than some of our more simple carbohydrates. It is also going to be a source of protein. So it's one of the few protein options that is not from an animal source that is still going to give us some quality protein. This type that I'm using, and I just put three quarters of a cup in. You notice I measured the 1/4 cup 3 times, but this is, I'll bring it closer to the camera so you can see, this is a multicolor quinoa. You can see the bag is clear, but multicolor quinoa, we're getting 3 different colors. You can choose whichever variety works best, but again, a mix of colors can make it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, and it'll give us a little bit more variety. So far we have some veggies from the onions, some veggies, or you could technically count tomato as a fruit, from the fire roasted tomatoes. We've added the vegetable stock. We've added our corn, which is going to count as a grain. We've added our quinoa, which offers some grain and some protein. We've added, or we're about to add, 1 can of the whole version of beans. So again, these are drained and rinsed and ready to add in the 1 can just as they are. And the beans are going to be an awesome source of fiber. They're going to offer some great protein. They're also going to add, again, to this texture. A lot of times texture is a big thing with soup, and this is going to help give that variety that's going to be tasty and nutritious. Beans are high in protein, they're high in fiber, they are offering us a lot of different things in terms of the nutritional components. So getting a variety of different types of beans can help promote a healthy digestive tract, can promote heart health, can help to manage cholesterol levels, and a host of other things. A lot of times people are thinking about, how can I make healthier choices? And I think the tendency is for us to focus on what we want to cut out of our diets. Now, of course, that's well-intentioned, but I would encourage us to consider if you're looking for a way to make healthier new habits, maybe think about what you want to include. What are the foods that you'd like to put in your diet and be proactive about getting? A lot of times when we set goals in a way that is positive and is focusing on what we want to include, things will kind of automatically fall into place. If you're filling up on those foods that are going to help set you up for success, you won't even necessarily have to put as much thought about avoiding other foods. You'll just fill up on stuff that's going to make you feel great. So beans are one thing that you could consider adding more frequently to your new year. Another one to be thinking about that we've talked about a little bit in the past as well is increasing fruits and veggies. Fruits and veggies are going to be a great source of antioxidants, really nutrient rich, and again, helping us feel our best. They're also going to be a great source of water content, and making sure that we're hydrated is really key to wellness. So let's go ahead and jump into cutting our poblano pepper. Now I've already washed it. I would go ahead and wash it if you haven't already. I'm going to go ahead and make a little dome with my hands and cut off the top. Some people are interested to find out that the part that includes the spice is actually going to be, and I was going to put on gloves. Let me go ahead and, I've probably gotten a little bit on my hands already, but I will do that just to be on the safer side with the spice. You see the white part, there's kind of a white membrane in here, and that's going to be the part that actually contains the spice. A lot of times we think that the spice is on the seeds. Well, when I cut into this membrane, which I just did, it released the compound that is going to have the spice in it. And when it released that, it's going to coat the peppers, the seeds. It coats the seeds with that. So yes, the seeds will feel that spicy kind of burning piece, but the reason is because it's because the membrane's been cut into and therefore released that in there. I'm going to gently cut to open the sides, and I'm going to try just gently to pull this out with the seeds intact. I'm kind of twisting. You can see I've now only gotten a few of the seeds into the peppers, a few of the seeds into the pepper, and am removing this part altogether. I'm going to clear those out. Again, I'm thankful I'm wearing gloves because I'm not going to totally cover my fingers in this. This part we're going to set aside, as well as the part with the seeds. So now you can cut this however you prefer, however you would like it in your soup. Spice is something that you really don't want. You could leave this out. Again, like I said, I'm not a huge spice person myself, but I think it'll be subtle enough in this recipe that it's not going to be overpowering. We have a lot of things like the sweet corn, the fire roasted tomatoes, that are going to be flavors that kind of lower it a little bit. If you're not sure, if you're skeptical, maybe add half. I can already see I've only added in a few pieces, and it's already adding some really pretty green color that gives us variety. In the same way that, absolutely we eat for taste, but the way that our food looks and the different colors that we see, the aesthetic of it, does really impact our eating experience. So another thing to consider for the new year is, what is the presentation of food? Certainly we don't have to be presenting, a perfect, beautiful plate every night, but getting a variety of colors can make it even more enjoyable. I've already put 2 cups of water into the food processor. So if you have already cut your poblano pepper, or if you are not cutting a poblano pepper, which no judgment, if you would prefer not to add any spice, you can go ahead and add water to your blender or your food processor. I'm going to add a few more slices, but I don't know if I'm up for adding the entire thing, so totally no shame if you're not. We'll add a few more pieces in here, then I will remove my gloves safely and switch to our food processor. And as I mentioned, we already have water in the food processor. So I'm going to go ahead and take my rinsed and drained cannelli beans, add them into the water. It's important that you add the water first, well, depending on your specific blender or machine, but for most equipment, adding the water first is going to be preferable. So we've got that there. There probably will be some bubbles. The juice of the garbanzo beans usually makes some bubbles. That's normal, not concerning. You can see on mine, Hopefully you can see that. You can see that there are some bubbles. So I'm gonna go ahead and pour that mixture into our soup. It's looking great. A reminder that you are not adding the kale yet. I would recommend transferring the kale to your refrigerator until we are ready. You can choose to either cook this on low for 5 to 6 hours or on high for 3 to 4 hours. I'm gonna go ahead and do high for 3 to 4 hours. The kale will be added about 30 minutes prior to the finish of your cooking time. A reminder that this soup is going to cook in the slow cooker either on high for 3 to 4 hours or on low for 5 to 6 hours. The soup has been in the slow cooker here for a little bit over 3 hours. Let's take a closer look at how this soup is coming. So you'll notice that the quinoa has expanded a little bit. It does absorb some of the water, so it'll probably look a little bit different than when you put it in. I'm getting ready to add in the kale. The kale is 3 cups of kale, chopped, washed, and ready to head in. So I'm gonna go ahead and take my lid off. It smells great already. I'm gonna use a spoon to help me transfer this in. It looks like a lot of kale, but remember it is going to cook down. It's been 30 minutes since I put the kale in. Remember when we first put it in, it was basically filling the entire slow cooker. I'm so excited to see. Let's take a peek. As you can see, the kale has cooked down quite a bit. At this point, it's a great time to assess the consistency of your soup. If you want it to be a little bit thinner, you could add a little bit more unsalted vegetable stock at this time. Thank you so much for tuning in to this edition of What's Cooking with AARP. I hope you really enjoy your kale, quinoa, and cannellini bean soup, and wish you a wonderful start to 2021. We'll see you next time.